Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Coaches Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where you can join the coaches live and unscripted as we recap the week and answer your questions from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and today I'm joined by coaches Taya Friedstedt, Ian Murray, and our nutritional therapist, Andrea Cullen. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Excellent.
Good
Excellent.
morning.
So we've got some interesting topics today. The title today being Recovery Carbs and Your Favorite Event of the Season. We're going to do a little round table here today. And we're going to go ahead and jump straight into a short conversation for us. And hopefully we'll spark a conversation within yourself about your event and kind of looking at your season and what you can pull from that and be able to gain from and then move forward. So who wanted to go first here this morning to share their favorite event?
I'll go.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. So thinking about everything I did this year, and I tried a lot of new things this year. I raced crits for the first time, and I raced cyclocross for the first time this year. And looking back at one event that I just felt amazing about, and it's one that I will always cherish and think as one of my favorite events, was a road race, part of the Intelligentsia Cup. Those are the Intelli Cup, for those of you who are familiar with it here in Chicago. These are crit races, but they have 3 road races within it. And one of them is the state championship road race. That's the one that was my favorite one this year.
Nice.
And the reason that was my favorite race was really something that happened that it was. So I'll briefly describe it. And I mentioned this one in the past, but not from this perspective. There was a very steep hill on the race, and it was very short but very steep, and it came right after a downhill. So we came through a downhill, had to do a very sharp turn and go right into that uphill. And as I did that, I dropped my chain in lap 2. So in the first lap, I was with the front group. It was a strong group. It was a hard group to keep up with, but I was keeping up with that group. But as soon as I hit that hill after the first lap, so it was in the second lap, I dropped my chain. And because it was so steep, I couldn't just shift and get my chain back on. So I had to get off my bike and run up that hill. The SRAM support car came next to me and said, "Do you need help?" I'm like, "No, I got this," and I thought for a couple seconds, and I thought, well, this sucks, right? Because now I not only lost the front group, I lost a lot of time. And I guess this race, it is what it is. I mean, I didn't think it was over, because it's not over until it's over, but it was one of those moments. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to give my best here. So I went back, kept running up until I could get back on the bike and get the chain back, and kept going. So I was by myself for a little while. And then I caught up to the group that was chasing the front group. And I stayed in that group. And that was a group of 5. And that group was going pretty fast, but people were starting to get tired. And you could tell that 2 of the riders in that group of 5 could go up the hill pretty well. They hammered that hill. The other ones were hanging on. And I stayed in the back, and I was sort of just like hanging on. So I started to strategize. I said, you know what? I'm going to come up with a strategy. I'm not in the front group. I'm not going to make a podium, but I'm going to make this my race right here with this group of 5. And sure enough, it came a time that I attacked. I decided that I was just going to really go for it. I had done a lot of these intervals in training, and I said, I have nothing to lose here. I already dropped a chain, right? I'm going to solo attack off the back over here.
Off the back. I love it.
So what I did was I took the group by surprise, because I was sort of like staying in the back. And one of the racers, who actually somebody I know, she was super nice. She said to me, "No, let's go, Taya, you got this." I'm like, yeah, I'm suffering here, right? Really suffering with the poker face there. And so after that steep hill, that's when I attacked, because they hammered that hill. And I said, you know what, this is when I'm going to go. And I did. And I opened a gap. And I went all through to the finish line by myself with the group, and no one was able to catch up.
Wow.
So was that a podium? I actually did get a podium because it was a state podium and a finish, I mean, by finish order podium. I didn't even know that because I thought
Wow.
it was way, way in the back. But nevertheless, why did I love that race? Will I always remember that race? Because I really got out of my comfort zone and I tried something that I had never tried before. I did an attack. I did a breakaway. It was one of those things that I'm like, this is great. So it was overcoming the fact that I had a failure mid race, but I picked it up, and that experience, is what counts. It really is
Yeah.
the fact that I put that to work, and I felt really good about my effort, and so that was it for me.
Excellent, excellent. We'll slide on over to Ian here, but before we do that, a lot of times, like Tay had mentioned, your favorite event or your most memorable event may not be jumping on top of a podium, because there is only one winner to each of these races. So, like we always talk about, it's important to find kind of your inner goals or kind of what you're looking to do. So that's one thing that you can kind of think about. So how about you, Ian? What were your some of your memorable moments of the year?
So I have two that I want to talk about. One was the race itself wasn't all that memorable. If you remember, I did ITU International Triathlon Union World Championships this
Mm-hmm.
year,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple days before departing, I had to get a new bike
Oh yeah,
because
that was memorable.
yeah, that was memorable because my bike, the bike company I had emailed me actually the day I was leaving and said, "Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, our bad, your bike is not ITU legal. We forgot to tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Whoops." So I had to get a bike that I got en route, and I rode it for 35 miles total prior to the race, which was 3/4 distance. So for a 75-mile bike leg, or 90, it was 120K, whatever that comes out to miles. Um, and in the race itself was just, it was an okay race for me. I finished well. I didn't have a great day. I didn't have a bad day. But it was just the overall experience. I got to go with some friends,
Mm-hmm.
some ODZ riders, Odiva's Deirdre and Seth were
Nice.
there. A couple other friends were there as well. So it was a big thing. Took my nephew with us on the trip. So the trip itself made it a very memorable race and a very memorable experience. The racing in Denmark was cool. It was pretty neat there. The people were awesome. But it itself, the race, I was kind of like meh, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But the overall experience was fantastic. And we'd really honestly focus more on the experience in the race for that one because if you remember again, we were in the middle of a move. We'd been homeless since May 30th, and that
Yeah,
race was July 14th. We'd traveled to Canada where I got to go ride with Stefan from
yeah.
ODZ. Um, yeah, doing some work out there. And then so we were just kind of in such a flux that the race wasn't the priority necessarily. And then the actual other memorable race for the race itself. My mother-in-law was here a couple months ago, and she actually got to see me race for the first time. And it was only a 5K, so it wasn't anything big,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a 5K that none of the competitors knew each other. So the competitors from my team knew me,
Mm-hmm.
but none of us knew anything about the other teams.
Huh.
We just I, some people I knew a couple guys that I knew were pretty quick, but I didn't know whether they were still fast or whether because I knew them from a while back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those races that literally from the gun was like a kind of like a Zwift race. Uh,
Wow.
Hammer it and see
Hold on.
who can hang. And so it was only a 5K, so it was a running, and it was one of those races where I took off and I was gonna settle quickly, and then I realized, there's not many people with me. Let's see how much we can make this hurt and see who's got some ability to hurt within them.
That's nice.
And so I just kept the throttle down. We went through 800 meters at about a 4:25 mile pace.
Whew.
Yeah, it was fast.
Yeah.
It was really fast. Um, and I settled down right after that. But it was one of those thin the herd and then just listen to people just break.
Oh.
And it was one of those. My team and we had kind of practiced running around. It was a course that we knew. We kind of figured out, okay, what is the course like? What are the winds like? And we'd done a lot of
Wow.
prep for this really stupid race. Um, and and so I knew the grade of the hill and the winds were
Wow.
going to affect me a little bit different than him because I knew the guy behind me when I saw him was a little bit bigger guy. So I figured, okay, he's got just a little bit more power. And so I laid off the pace a little bit in the hardest parts of the course, but I knew as long as I made the turn well before him, I could accelerate and
Mm-hmm.
and take back everything he had gained.
Mm,
So he would gain 10 meters and then lose 30, and
mm.
then gain 10 and then lose 30. And so like he told me afterwards, he's like, man, I would reel you back. I would reel you back, and then he'd run again on me. It was like the worst
Cat
fishing
and
story
mouse.
ever for him. And so we went through that, and it was just great because at the end of it, I ended up winning, and the team tactics we used that we had planned
That's nice.
actually worked out well because my team ended up winning the team race as well. So
Wow.
we'd actually laid it out perfect for the guys to stretch it out, and then our ladies came in and just absolutely destroyed the women's field because they just grouped up and worked together, whereas the guys we made everybody just blow up. So it worked out for so it was just a great experience, and having my mother-in-law get to actually see me race because normally she just thinks I'm sick
Yeah.
because I'm skinny.
What?
She always sees me when I'm like at the peak of race training. So she's like, "Oh, is he okay? Does he need to eat more?" Uh, yeah, so
Why
it
is
was
he
really
just
good
like
with that too.
curled up in the corner at the
Yeah,
family
you're looking
events?
very thin. You should be eating more.
He sleeps a lot. Because when we go to Chile, I'll run a lot usually when we're there,
Yeah.
and because we usually go in their summer, and there's some great running in Santiago. So I'll usually do between
Yeah.
50 and 90-mile running weeks while I'm there.
Wow.
And so I run, I eat, I take a nap.
Yeah.
So she basically sees me, running and then napping.
Man. That's a fun event to hear about team tactics in a running event. I think are super special. You just don't hear about that every day, and to be in that sort of situation. So definitely a great experience. So heading over down to Andrea. I know we've been battling through a couple things kind of late in the season, but I'm sure there's some memories. If anyone could find a unicorn or a four-leaf clover in all of her season, I know it's going to be Andrea.
A rainbow farting unicorn.
A rainbow party unicorn.
Yeah, so the season definitely didn't play out the way I thought it would. But the race that stands out was an Olympic distance called Hell of the West, and that was in June. And this is our club event, and it's not called Hell of the West for no reason. It's usually quite a rough swim in the bay, and then it's a longer than normal Olympic distance bike with a lot of hills, and it was on a new course this year. And then the run is 5K straight up a steep hill called the Dunlicky Hill, and then 5K straight back down. I'm always really anxious about the races where you know a lot of people. I like to be the one that I don't know anybody and nobody knows me. And there's a huge amount of hype because it's the club event and everyone's out for murder. And the women in my age group are amazing athletes. So you're in for a tough race. The sea, anytime I've done it, has been really, really rough. And I'm literally blue before we start. And this year we were in the middle of a heat wave. So it was going to be close to high 20s, 30s, and the sea was flat calm. So for the first time, I wasn't anxious about the start of the race. And it was a beautiful morning. And on the way down in the car, there's a really great Irish band called The Stunning I would have been a big fan of them when I was a kid. And they played my favorite song. And I was like, this is going to be a really good day. So it was called Brewing Up a Storm. So the swim, I came out with the top ladies. And I was kind of like, how did that happen? Where's everybody else? And the bike went well. My boyfriend was marshalling, so I got to see Garen, and I got to see a lot of the girls that were marshalling as well around the way, and they were all yelling, and it was really nice to feel. Actually, it's the first race I felt like so it was good to know people, if that makes any sense. My anxiety, I sort of got over it. So just as I was coming in to transition off the bike, one of our club members, Richard, just roared at me, "Cullen, it's your race." And I was like, I panicked for a second, and then because I was like, oh my God, the pressure's on now. and then he's like, what are you doing? Get moving. So off I went on the run. The run was very difficult. I found it very hard to manage my breathing, whatever was going on. The heat, menstrual cycle, it could have all been related. So I just had to kind of gather myself and just get up that hill, and you see everyone. It's a straight out and back. So then you're watching everyone on the way down, and you know who's ahead and you know who's behind, and you literally just run as fast as possible. And I knew it was okay. I got to the end. I hate the finish. It's another really anxious place. So I literally ran through the finish straight down to the beach and just stuck my legs back in the water. But it was actually my race of the season. I placed third in my age group, which I was really surprised by. And it was one of those events where you don't realize to absorb it all in. You know, we're always thinking about the next thing, the next race, the A race. And you need to embrace each race because you can't control the A race. So there's a lesson in it as well. That's a farting unicorn, maybe.
It's a farting unicorn. I told you we'd find one. Oh, that's what a great share. Oh man, that's fun. I don't know if I could top that. I don't get to get out much, but I did do one memorable event this year, and it was a new series that is out here in Southern California, and it is a 100 kilometer series, sort of posed as kind of the cyclist marathon distance. You get timing chips and that sort of thing, and it was very early in the season for us, March. For us, but here in California, you know, it's December 19th and people are thinking about taking their 2 days off for the season and then getting started back again right after Christmas. So, so with that, you know, I got a chance to kind of go against a lot of people in my age group and kind of get back into putting a number back on, and really got a chance to kind of test my fitness at this distance, and haven't done a whole lot of racing, and then not even a whole lot of length at pace, but really not about so much kind of the interaction, but just really pushing myself physically, and also because it was such a large group for so long, because there was 30K loops so that we were doing on some roads that we knew. Everyone knew the hills, kind of how to push each other, and we ended up with this large group, and there's a lot of just dynamic tactics that you just don't get, where, you know, you're on a group ride and everyone's trying to break each other, but at, 50K into a 100K ride, nobody's breaking anybody. Everybody's trying to figure out like what's going to happen for the last, 30K, 40K or whatever. And people are trying to legitimately work. And we're trying to get rid of the people that aren't working. You hear people yelling, all that stuff. And it was just super cool because the short rides that we go on, kind of like, coffee rides, people just ripping legs off. And when you get to these distances, I feel like you get people that are like, okay, I've got to conserve. You're getting with groups, people are working together, you're starting to talk to each other, and I just got hooked up with a good group, and something I definitely want to do again for the season to come. And they're just starting to grow more and more, and I know the other coaches have some experience with this, but I like it because it's not as intense as kind of the crit series that I coach for a lot of the riders. The lengths are a little bit longer, and I like that. I also did a 100-mile ride, which ended up being in the 5-hour range, and just didn't have the same feeling. So I'm kind of trying to get a feel for kind of what I want to do for the coming season. But between 100K and 100 miles is kind of, I'm liking that. You've got to put a lot of nutrition in and a lot of planning. I like that because it's not just like one gel and finish type deal for the 45-minute races. And I kind of like that. So that's my year.
Andrea, we call that 1/3 of an event.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
What was funny is Jason and I were talking about how his strategy on this one.
Yeah.
And I recommended an intensity factor for him. He's like, hell no.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
Dude, that's what we do for our half Ironman, then run off of it.
He told me, and I was like, I think I might have gotten maybe within 0.05. Like he maybe said like 85. He might even said 90. No,
0.9.
Yeah, 0.9. I probably ended up at like 0.84, 0.86, something like that. And then I remember sitting after coming up the last hill and coming to the finish. And then I couldn't get off my bike. And literally they were like, how you guys probably have bike catchers? They had people catchers because some people couldn't get off the bike. And I was like trying to unclip. I couldn't unclip. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And then I just thought of you and I was like, man, I can't even walk. How could you run after that? Like, it's nuts. But yeah, definitely kudos to you.
Yeah, and I wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned there, Jason, when you said, finding out what you like to do and trying these events. Yeah. And I think that's a good point for everyone. A lot of times when you get into cycling, all you hear about is, and you can comment from a triathlon perspective, but I think that's more prevalent in cycling. You start cycling and you see people around you just spending endless time on the saddle. They just go and they just do these long rides. And it seems to me that, the more miles, the more time, the longer the ride, the better. So there's a lot of that impression, at least I got that impression, that the best stuff to do is just to be on your bike as long as you can, and achieving 200-mile races, if you can call it that, or an event, or a fondo, or you go into Zwift and you spend 10 hours on it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But one thing that never clicked for me was spending that much time in a saddle. Could I do it? Yes. Yeah. I built my fitness to be able to do that. And I did a lot of those. I did camps where I would be on the saddle for 5 hours a day for 5 straight days. I would do, the ride across Wisconsin for 175 miles. I did all of that, but it was never something that I really loved doing. And I just thought that was something you had to do as a cyclist. So it wasn't until very recently that I found out that, you know what, I'm more of a short course person. I'm an explosive rider. I want to go out there and do the short stuff that requires power for, short periods of time and over. So it's punchy hills. It's, the cyclocross races. It's maybe very short time trials. So just something to keep in mind too. It's you don't have to sort of like conform to all of those around you. Maybe find what you really like to do and go with it.
Yeah. Well, there's funny in the triathlon world, and Andrea, you're going to answer this question. As soon as someone finds out you're a triathlete, what is the first thing they ask you?
Have you ever won? I bet.
No.
I don't know. I don't know yet.
Kona?
Oh, have you raced Kona? Kona, right.
Actually, not a lot of people know about Kona in Ireland. It wouldn't be at the forefront of everyone's mind. Okay, Ironman isn't everything here. Yeah.
Okay, so for the rest of the world, the developed world, no, in the U.S. actually that's one thing. Anytime, because it's on NBC here, they broadcast it every year.
Yeah.
So it's always, have you raced Kona? Have you raced Kona? And so there's a lot of the triathlon community is all about doing Ironman, doing fulls, and even people get into tri and they're like, oh yeah, I want to do a full Ironman someday. I'm like, well, and why? What's your goal? Look, if you just want to do it, awesome. Just do it so you can say I did the challenge, because it's like doing the Century Ride. It's cool. But like for me, I'll race a full periodically, but I like the half. And
me too.
That's a distance I really like. And honestly, I also like the Olympic distance quite a bit too. So it just depends for me schedule wise. But I'm like you, Tay. I don't feel like sacrificing 20 hours a week all that often. And it's when you're doing the game of who can train harder and longer and longer and longer. Yeah. It's kind of like who can put more hours in at work. I told my people my last job, I'm going to lose that race every day because I'm not going to just sit at work to work. And I don't want to just train long just because I want to train long.
Right. And I truly believe that people are drawn upon what they really like to do probably matches their athlete type. So in my case, I really love the short stuff and the explosive stuff. It turns out I'm that kind of rider anyway. Mm-hmm. I am terrible in the long, flat roads with crosswinds. So yeah, so something to consider.
Yeah.
I wonder, are we more afraid of different types of pain? So like for me, I would prefer the pain of endurance than the pain of intensity. And the frenzy of intensity frightens me more than having a long race where you're just battling yourself. That means I should challenge myself to do a sprint at some point, I guess, because they're the ones that terrify me the most. I'd nearly rather do a full Ironman than a sprint, which doesn't make sense. So I guess we have to challenge ourselves with both types of pain, maybe at some point as well.
And maybe even go back to Nate last, from our mental skills coach, and say, is it really out of fear, or is it really what you enjoy doing, right? So are you avoiding something because you're fearful of not being able to do something? So sure. Yeah, that's so many facets there.
Yeah. So many things to think about. So yes, just finding, we always talk about finding your why and that sort of thing. So take this time of the season to be able to think about that, as you're sitting, recluse at the family events in this coming week and not wanting to talk to anyone. You could think about this. This is what you could think about. You could listen to this podcast in your ear and say, hey, this is what my season's like. Oh, so speaking of that, we're talking about racing, training, trying to keep your fitness going, or, during this coming week or this Christmas season, or this end of December going into New Year's. questions from our forum or from our writers talking about if something has to give, how do I handle that? The question or conversation came up before. If you've got, I don't know how Andrea has 8 days worth of workouts and 7 days worth of the week, but that's kind of how she plans her week. But if you have, a whole week set of workouts, and something comes up like, and you can't make it, or you're out too late one night and you have to kind of really stack, how do we handle these? So what are some tips that we have for our listeners and for our riders out there that can help them with the season and these busy times?
Well, identify your key workouts. Those are the ones you don't skip.
Yes.
Those are ones you don't skip or you have to move around a little bit. That's for one. And two is don't stack. If you miss Monday, don't put Monday and Tuesday together.
Yeah.
Right.
Some of this is fire and forget. You miss it, and you just move on. Like I said, it's the key is identifying those workouts that matter. And if you're not sure which ones those are, ask your coach or ask a buddy or just take a look and say, what one is the most important for my development? And we're going to do that. For the multi-sport side, it's there are certain things, like I would argue that you can't skip all of your swims in a week for multiple weeks in a row. So even if you can just get in one swim, find that one key swim, that one key run, that one key bike, and then everything else just kind of fits around there.
Yeah. I think definitely for that.
If you're not traveling and you have access to your equipment, right? So let's say you're staying local, you have the festivities, and you're going to miss workouts. Try not to stay away from it more than 2 days if you're around.
I like that.
So I think, because then you're all of a sudden going into having to rebuild a little bit when you get back. But if it's 2 days or so, and then just fit something in, and it can be, in the lab, for example, if you're with us, you have 30-minute strength workouts in your calendar. This time of the year, we make it very flexible. You have an hour bike workouts. And if you have to pick, going back to what Ian said, which ones, the key ones, ask us in the forum, but you can look at the ones that have the higher training stress score and then so focus on those. Yeah. And again, don't pile them on and then move the other things around. And let some of them are just you're gonna let them go. It's fine.
Yeah. I guess oppositely, if you are traveling, and that's one of the things that we're doing here right after Christmas into New Year's, is if you don't have your bike and your other things, you'll need to do other things like run if you're you're a cyclist, because it's the easiest thing to do outside of equipment. So having some sort of plan, at least putting yourself at ease to be able to get out. And if you're with a group of people and you wake up and you go run, oh my gosh, it makes you feel better because nobody did anything else that day at the house. They're like, where'd you go?
And you get away from those people.
That's right. Take a break. You get a break.
Take a break. And then so it's a mental break too, because you have anxiety. Man, I would usually be getting up, doing my, my cycling workout, my swim or that sort of thing. But if you can just do that one thing, you'll get mentally set. You'll feel better about, spending that time with the family. It doesn't even have to be long. I'm talking 30, 45 minutes, get out. It's cross training. It's something, but it's a mental reset for you. So you feel like you're doing something versus nothing. I think that could be useful, especially when you're traveling. I mean, Taya did it on her trip just recently. She didn't have her bike and she ran and that was enlightening, right?
Enlightening. That's so true though. But that mental aspect of it is so important because you're still within your habit of working out, let's say if it's in the morning or if it's in the evening, and you just keep that on. But if you don't normally run, don't go running for 45 minutes the first time though.
Yeah.
Well, and so the one thing I will add on that, if you're not a normal runner, you don't know how to pace yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the basic thing. We've talked about this before.
I like this one.
You should be running at a point where you can speak in a sentence.
Yeah.
If you cannot speak in 1 to 2 sentences without losing your breath, you're going too fast.
Yeah.
Right? So here we're going to go over my 5 levels again real quick because this is really important when you're training without power or without your heart rate or you're doing something new. Level 1. I can speak all day long. That's my fun conversational run or jog with my friend who has problems and we're dealing with.
I don't know that exists in my vocabulary, but okay.
Whatever. We're gossiping. We're talking about what anything. Kids, whatever. It doesn't matter. but it's very, very easy. And you can speak in a whole paragraph without losing your breath. Level 2, we can speak in a sentence without losing our breath. Maybe 2, unless you're super verbose. Then, that's where you are. Level 3, you can get out maybe a sentence, but really a half a sentence, a phrase, a dependent clause type thing for those English majors.
Dependent clause. Whoa.
Yeah. So that's about what you could do. So you have to take a breath somewhere in your sentence. Level 4 is a word, maybe 2. So it becomes a very choppy, very difficult conversation, and you're not able to have a really fluid discussion, but it's a word or 2. Level 5 is a noise, like usually that's about what you can get out. That's where you're going all out. So that's gonna change in your pacing how long you're running. Because if you're doing a 20-minute run, you can probably run a little harder and still speak in a sentence. But if you're going for an hour, maybe not. But in general, that pacing is not going to change all that much. So just keep that in your head. And for these runs we're talking about, if you're not a normal runner, level 2 or level 1.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to level 3.
Yeah.
So this is where we all appreciate the phenomenal athlete that Ian is, because he can do level 5 and get a whole sentence of curse words out at his opposition at the same time. Isn't that right, Ian?
And that's what I was saying. He was saying level 1. I start at level 3, I think.
But so that's actually a big problem that people have, and because they don't understand how hard it is to run easy.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to dial it back so much. And some people are like, oh, well, I feel like I'm barely walking. I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah. So you could easily get injured in this as well. So be very careful. Andre, you're jumping in? Go ahead. Yeah.
So normally, and if you're kind of normal and balanced, Christmas Day is a day when we all eat a lot. Generally.
Yeah.
So you could, if you were going to train the day after or have 2 days off of a lot of eating, if it really goes wrong, on that day when you go back, it's interesting to do a high intensity session or a hard session, and you'll actually appreciate what a proper carb load does, because you will feel amazing. It's like a mini taper carb load, and suddenly you're like, whoa, I hit all those powers today. Yeah. Maybe I should do this for a race.
There was a funny meme, I think, was it Taya's page, right? That your kids were asking, how come mom's...
Oh, so the question was, so my daughter asked me on Sunday, we're in the car going to, of course, her favorite store, Target. So we're in a car, and she goes, "Mommy, but you're so like extra happy and funny today. Why?" And my answer was carbs. Mommy had a lot of carbs today.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, what it does for you, it's definitely interesting. I guess on that topic, we can talk kind of about we've talked a lot about fueling kind of our workouts and that sort of thing, but during these seasons, obviously we can leverage some of the events and things that we go to be able to recover from our workouts. But I guess the question comes up: are recovery carbs or recovery things the same across the board? Like right after a workout, eating versus whole foods versus potatoes versus birthday cake.
Beer.
Or what was it?
Beer.
Oh yeah, beers. Yeah, these are all things that have carbohydrates. And didn't we find a protein beer at some point, Ian? Or no?
We did, but it's only sold in the UK, so it's not of any use to me.
Not of any use to us. So I guess we can start the conversation here with kind of our recovery carbohydrates and how we can kind of stratify things, maybe have a conversation with ourselves of how we could use that through this Christmas season as well.
So maybe those, the ones that you do right after a workout or right after an event, are they all are carbs, and can you just eat any of them? Because sometimes, it's like I told Andrea, sometimes I just want to eat a lot of chocolate after as my carb for recovery. Does it make a difference if I eat the chocolate versus bananas and whole foods or potatoes, sweet potatoes? And I know that overall, you're looking for nutrition density, right, in your food, but what about that short window for recovery? Does it matter?
So are all carbs the same? Well, what will kind of differentiate carbs is how quick they release. So how fast we digest them, how quickly they get into the bloodstream, and then from the bloodstream, we're going to hold some in the bloodstream to maintain blood sugar levels, and then depending on how fast the carbs or the glucose spikes in the bloodstream, we're going to release insulin, and that's going to pull it into the muscles and the liver to replenish glycogen. So they talk about that 30 window. Our muscles are more receptive. The sort of state of the muscle has changed with how sensitive we are to insulin. And so we have a faster window to pull in things a little bit more quickly. That really only matters when it's urgent to recover. So multi-day races, twice a day training, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to, so I suppose, how do you differentiate it all? But chocolate would be quite high in fat. Mm-hmm. So depending on the sugar content of it, which would depend on how the percentage of it, it's going to be a little bit slower than straight sugar. Straight sugar is going to go into the bloodstream quickly, but it's going to spike insulin. So it's going to take it back out of the bloodstream where you're actually going to experience possibly a low when you're going to be hungry again. But in terms of recovery, it's going to be quicker. So am I making sense here?
Yeah. So let's use the example of having to recover just for the next day then. So you do a very hard workout and you want to recover for the next day.
You have plenty of time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be fast sugars. It can be normal mixed meals. However, if you've let your blood sugar levels dip during the session and you're feeling hypo, like you're getting the shakes, adrenaline's rushing, then you might want to take some. Well, the problem is some of us, if we take something sugary and quick, we actually get too much of an insulin release and we'll swing from high to low and we'll be all over the shop. So we generally want a balanced mixed meal with a slower blood sugar release and then a more stable insulin response if time isn't urgent. But if you pull it back, the mixed meal is going to slow it all down anyway. So a mixed meal, if there's some protein or fat or fiber in there, it's going to act as a slower carbohydrate reserve. So the absorption is slower, the release into the bloodstream is slower. But occasionally, if you're just going for the chocolate or the cake, does it matter to the muscle? Not really. Does it matter to your health if you do it every single day? Probably.
You hear that, Ian? What?
All I got was if I'm feeling really zapped after a workout, a Moscow Mule will work because that's like straight sugar technically.
Yes.
With vodka in it.
That's alcohol. Yeah, sugar alcohols. That is a sugar too.
Or chocolate cake because it's got protein in it with eggs. As long as you don't eat a vegan chocolate cake, so a chocolate cake. So I'm good.
Yeah.
I mean,
cake and alcohol.
Yeah. Well, I think what I try and get people to think about is over the course of the day, are you meeting your body's needs? Are you getting everything in? Are you getting the vitamins, the protein, the antioxidants, the healthy fats, all of that? And if you have a calorie allowance, well, does it really matter if you have something that's not quite so healthful? Well, at least you've hit all of the other goals. So you have a bit of leeway. But if you're doing it all the time and weight is an issue or health is an issue, it's probably not great. But I'd say at Christmas time, it's healthy to allow yourself a little bit of something. It's normal. If we can't take time off and we can't relax the diet, it's not that we're brilliant and perfect. It's possibly that we're a little bit imbalanced as normal people. Now, if you're, aiming for the Olympics next year, well, then possibly every day, every meal, every session does matter, but we're normal, balanced human beings, and our children like to see us smiling, don't they?
They making funny jokes and silly jokes, yeah. So then I guess I could do a simple carb, or I could do a carb full loaded with sugar if I had some other things in it to balance that insulin release. So if I had the protein or some fat or some fiber. Yeah. But then what I'm hearing too is it doesn't have to be that super fast release carb.
Not
right?
time.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I would recommend to you then is maybe blueberry pancakes.
It has vitamins, has minerals, it has your fruit.
It has fiber.
It has fiber. Yeah. So I think really the conversation becomes
it's not working. Just wants that bar of chocolate just once or twice.
so it comes down to when your next workout is. And we chat about this a lot. And so if your workout is if you're doing a double day, let's say, crazy people like to ride their bike in the morning and run in the afternoon or that sort of thing.
Same people, yeah.
Yeah, some people. So you definitely want to make sure you have food on board for that. for a lot of people, let's say single sport riders, if you're doing, an intense workout in the morning and you want to do, even if it is just endurance or tempo in the evening, you need a fuel for that. But if you've got 24 hours, Andrea's right. You've got time to eat. Go eat a meal. Go put things together, get a protein, fat, and carb. Go eat a blueberry pancake at Ian's house. He makes them by the dozen, and so you grab that food and just put real food in, because there isn't this urgency to refuel yourself, because there's time. It takes time to bring this in over time, but you've got 24 hours, let's say, if you're going the next morning. That's a huge window for digestion. And even in that time, if you did nothing and then you went to sleep, you'd lose some of it, So it's just a matter of understanding kind of when your next training is and this next window, because everybody wants to optimize it. And if you optimize it and then eat the meals, then you're in a situation where you're stacking yourself, right? You've refueled yourself completely after your workout, and now you're putting these 3 square meals on top of it, and you're like, I can't understand why I can't drop weight, I can't reach my goals, because you're overfueling your workouts and you're fueling yourself well and you're doing all the right things, but maybe you're not reaching your goals because of that. And so that could be where an athlete could take a look.
And I think
one of the things
one
of the things, and Andrew, you can comment on this, is I like the portables, the Scratch Lab portables. Those are great because they're small enough. You can get a little bit of that sugar in there because there's usually some rice or there's fruit to it, or chocolate, depending if you do the blueberry chocolate rice cakes, which are awesome.
Yep. Team camp every day.
They're fantastic, but they're small enough if you cut them small enough that you get that immediate sensation, but it's not so much that you're replacing all the calories and you're not doing some overkill in there.
Yeah, that's something I've been talking to an athlete about this week. He's an ultra racer, so we've been trying to create portables for him that are also healthy, because it's just that amount of food ingestion in all of the long training sessions. You can't be using junk. So there's things like, sweet potato, cocoa brownies would be healthy. You can use rice or polenta to make all sorts of bars and little power balls. And, maybe Christmas, if you have time, there's another lady who has a really good website, proteinpowder.com, I think it is. She has really cool little treats and things, but she uses protein powders and healthy things in there. So it's like trying to make healthy cookies or healthy brownies. And there's some awesome recipes available if you have a look around on the internet.
Speaking of like powders and that sort of thing, what about like prepared recovery shakes that we see out there? Are those
my famous one?
Yeah, I mean those are one. I mean Ian does one that's it's got a lot of whole foods in it. But what about the ones that are like post workout? It's got your 2-to-1 ratio, blah blah blah. What are our thoughts?
It's got caffeine in it. Some of them have caffeine in it too.
Wow, that's a lot. Can you imagine Taya on caffeine? Oh my. So I
don't think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't think we need as many of these products as we think we do. We're told that we do. But if we have, like athletes, part of our training is that our body gets exceptional at recovery. So even in the multi-sport athletes that might have 2 sessions a day, generally real food will do the recovery job for us before we get to the next session. And what you can do is eat your meal in the order of priority of what you need. So if you need carbs fast, start with the carbs on your plate, then have the proteins and the veg. If you need the protein first, start with the protein, then have the carbs and the veg, or whatever way you need to do it. So I would reserve the recovery powders for, the day you go out for a long run with your mates and you're coming home and it's going to be an hour before you can actually eat something. Or if it's, you've done a really long bike and you're a bit tired for your brick, but you have to do the brick, then take the liquid nutrition in and then get out on your brick and you haven't wasted any time. So I think there's a time and a place for them rather than a belief that we need them.
I also think that so much of that is marketing, that people feel compelled that they need these products. And a lot of times too, amateur athletes are looking at some of the things that pro athletes do and they follow what the pro athletes do, but the training is different. Your training is just because you're on the bike working hard for an hour a day doesn't mean that you need exactly the same ratios or recovery type or the same stuff that other people might be taking, so there's so much out there, there's so much information out there, and the ads that you get, all these super fancy recovery shakes, some of them are so extremely expensive, it's probably $5 a cup or something like that, and really you don't need that, you really don't.
No, they're not always actually taking the product. So when I worked with the rugby team, it was when rugby was really becoming professional and sponsorship deals were happening. And there was one particular rugby player, and he had sponsorship deals with everybody. But at any of his interviews, he would be there with a Powerade bottle, and I think he got like a certain number of percentage of money every time he took a swig. But there was water in there. He wasn't drinking Powerade.
That's really good. You know, in that same realm, there's stories of Alan Lim and Stacy Sims, and these are names that we know in the new sports nutrition world that came up with things like Osmo and Scratch Labs and things like that, where riders were riding with, you know, let's say Powerade or whatever in the cycling world, and what in fact was inside, and at the time what they called was secret drink mix. So it was SDM at the time. Alan Lim has a great story about how they were mixing this in between stages. At like Home Depots, mixing them in big paint cans and stuff, like all the ingredients that they had come up with to have the riders try. And this is when there was a push to get out of the 8% range of carbohydrate solution and bringing that down and bringing the salt levels up and all of that to where we are today. So, you know, we see this all the time in the media, people grabbing things. I see people like on the podium grabbing a Red Bull. I'm like, you would need a Red Bull after all of this like sport or this Olympic or this downhill ski, like, or whatever it is. But, you know, this is all in media. So we have to be careful and make those choices, you know?
And I'll give an example that sounds like an extreme example, but it's something that I saw 2 weeks ago is parents giving their 9-year-olds Gatorade before a swim practice.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So with that, we have a little circle of swimming parents here in ODZ as well, and crazy stuff. I mean, parents fueling and kids fueling. It's a crazy world out there. But yeah, you see it, man. I just don't get it. Ian's like bursting over there with the comments. What's going on over there?
No, I just like if I had to go to the kids' swim meets too, I'd be fueling as well.
Yeah. Pat has the Night Train has some great stories in that channel about a parents fueling and then getting reprimanded for it afterwards.
Yes. So, I wish I had a good product placement mug for my coffee here, and I'd be like, yes, I understand the product placement for
Folgers. So excellent. So yeah, so definitely take your mind and make sure you are mindful of the choices that you make. Sometimes a real food solution, when available, can work just as well during the season, and taking some indulgences for your recovery can also work. So make sure that you just plan accordingly and you know, reward yourself. You know, we've got a whole year that you're kind of on yourself for different things, and just be respectful of that, I think.
And Carrie Thomas here in the comments, Jason, she's on your team. She makes her hydration mix with maple syrup and Himalayan salt and lemon juice.
Yeah, you know, that getting that carbohydrate solution to get to just right is really nice. And just as long as your maple syrup doesn't have high fructose corn syrup, like Justin Wagner at the store calling me and sending me pictures, is this the right syrup? I said, Justin, that's not syrup, that's high fructose corn syrup. And he goes, I don't understand. He breaks down the number. He goes, but real syrup is this much more. And I'm like, that's the one you have to buy, my friend.
That's because all of Justin's blood goes into his left leg.
Yes, this is true. So I have to say, all right, we're gonna jump quickly here in the lab. There's been a couple comments for the strength sessions in our labs that are in between our workouts. We are in a lab where it is a little bit more focused on skills, and off the bike, we're actually working on movements that don't require you to be in the gym, but can do a lot of it at home. So I'm gonna pass it over to Ian on how you should be feeling. One, making sure that you're doing the strength workouts that are in the lab, and then second, kind of some coaching on how you should feel when you're doing these.
Yeah, so thanks, Jason. Talking about our strength training in the lab, there's a couple different things. One is if you've been doing strength all year, either in labs or in addition to labs, then what we started out with in the first week or two, it's not going to be that challenging. However, if you're new to strength training, these should be challenging for you. And what I want to implore people to do is focus on doing the workouts correctly, good form. It will make you sore. Mm-hmm. It may not make you sore today. It will probably make you sore in 24 to 72 hours time frame. This week was relatively easy. I believe we had two strength workouts.
Hmm.
It's going to ramp up to 3. But you really have to focus on doing them. They're a key workout for this lab, and doing them correctly. If you do your push-ups, but you're like, I'm just going to do some elbow benders instead of doing your push-ups.
Armor benders. I like that.
Yeah. That's not really meeting what we're trying to do. It's okay if you can't do the full number, or if you have to go to your knees, or you have to modify it. But we want you to go through the full range of motion, because that full range of motion is going to work the full muscle that we really need to be engaged, especially if you're going to do cyclocross at some point. Tay can tell you, cyclocross takes a lot of upper body strength to hold that position, especially when you're going up and down over really bad terrain. Or you're in a tight spot going through a turn, and you got to use that core and upper body to maintain the bike upright while you're sort of pedaling.
Or if you're climbing out of the saddle too. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of what we're doing as far as the lower body work is going to help that out of the saddle, that power, but also it's to help restore some of the flexibility and the balance between your legs. Almost all of us have some relative imbalance in our legs, in our hips, or in our leg strength. This is designed to help restore that, because we're not cycling as much. So you can get in there and do the one-legged squats. You can do the regular air squats. You can do things that are designed to challenge your body. They're challenging small muscle groups, not just big muscle groups. They're challenging balancing muscles. And what's really important is that if you find, hey, I can do one leg at 30 pounds, with these two 15-pound weights, but I can do the other one with two 10-pound weights, let's do both of them at the two 10-pound weights.
Yeah.
We don't want to make a Justin Wagner leg where one's like that big and the other one's that big, right? Because he rides a stage, so he only cares about one leg strength. But yeah, so that's the idea is you're going to have to do these, and you're going to have to focus on good form and doing the exercises completely. It's going to hurt probably in week 3. Sorry, suck it up, Buttercup. That's the way it goes. It's part of the balance of getting your body ready for the next cycling season. If you're in Australia and doing the lab, sorry, you're 6 months off. We have to figure something else out for you. But that's the best way I can think to explain it.
And so with that, the bike workouts are designed to go with the strength workouts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you are skipping all of the strength workouts and only doing the bike workouts, you might feel that the bike workouts are easy.
Mm-hmm.
But really, you should be carrying some of that load, right? You should be carrying the load of the strength workout in your legs and elsewhere in your body, so that you're working on skills. So now these are complementary to really get those muscles ready, and the workouts are not gonna feel that easy on the bike.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had recorded them. It would be everyone's next week workouts, and high cadence, really low grinding cadence. Really challenge yourself. In the videos, I'm really asking people, and people go, "Oh, low cadence," and they normally go at like 80. They're like, "Okay, 85." I'm talking like 60, 55. Like, get out of ERG, get down low, like really challenge yourself, because that's what's going to build that muscular endurance that we're looking for. And then high cadence are like 95, 90,
no, 120,
like 120, 115, like way on the other side. Like, anytime like Andy Jenner's on my stream and he's like, what, 115, come on, 130, 130, like he's always getting pushed. So push yourself, guys, push yourself on these, especially if there's skills, because you're going to need to use these so that you understand how to use these for later on. When you're on a recovery week, you're like, I'm going to go back to that. And that's where I need to use it. And so that's important.
And they're going to hurt because, you know what? They're going to hurt because you're working those muscles differently. They're not going to hurt because you are at 200% of FTP.
Exactly.
So, right.
Exactly.
And we are going to get, my wife has already decided we need to update some of the videos. So when we're in Santiago, we're going to shoot some more videos outside at the park there.
Be fun.
So we'll get some of that, get some of the exercises up. But like I said, it's really, really important that you think of these as not just individual workouts or individual exercises. You got to go through the whole thing. And I know some of it's going to hurt. I know, especially the pull-up part. Not everyone has access to pull-ups, but if you have access to pull-ups, you can use an elastic band to help get you up there. You can get some support. Somebody can support for you. Or you can jump up and then slowly bring yourself down into the negative. Yeah, like Jason does. Rylan lifts him up, and then he goes down. But it's actually really important because if you're working a lot of push and you don't have that balanced pull,
Yeah.
well, you're going to create muscular imbalances upper body wise that you don't want to do. And frankly, I will tell you from a swimming perspective and from a cycling perspective, if you don't have that requisite back strength, you're not going to be able to maintain form. So for swimming, it's really important for your actual pull through. But for cycling, it's important to be able to keep yourself from rounding.
Yeah.
You need to be able to have that nice, good, solid back form. And if you have a good, solid upper back, followed by that good, solid lower back and strong core, you're going to be in much better shape, 2 hours into your ride because
Right.
you won't be hunching over. You won't start having neck pains up here. You'll be able to hold it.
Yeah, the neck pain and the lower back pain that we hear so much about in
Yeah.
cycling. Yeah.
And that was one thing. This is my second, coming into my third full, like kind of working with full body workouts and actually really, testing the strength now with some of our new beta tests. This is the first time that when we did the 100-mile ride, no inkling. We're out there 5+ hours with all the breaks, and it's really going to help. I mean, I have been plagued even from before cycling with lower back pain and that sort of thing. But it's been a really great 2 seasons, really. Just kind of working with between the 15-minute kind of everyday stuff that Taya kind of puts out and the painful strength, heavy strength that Ian's got us on right now for testing for you guys. It's pretty amazing. But when I watch the videos, when I do it's pretty amazing to watch. I'm like, wow, I lifted something off the ground. That's pretty cool.
It's not much for Jason. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's power cleaning milk jugs right now.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Jason's coming a long way. He's doing really good.
yeah, it's a new learning process, but it's been fun. And you know me, I'm a sucker for new things, and I love recording and teaching. So it all kind of works together. So, all right. Any other comments kind of about this? I think we've kind of rounded that up. That's looking pretty good. So really great talk today. Just some introspective views on kind of call out to you to think about your favorite event of this year as the year closes out. And then talking about your Christmas season, this New Year's Christmas time, and how you're going to kind of lay that out, choose your key workouts, that sort of thing. And then as well as that on the nutrition side of things, recovery, understanding that the window that we're looking at, depending on when you're fueling and the sort of things that you're getting in, just understand what they are. I think if we're conscious of what we're putting in, whether it be an indulgence or fuel for your next workout, as long as you know what you're putting in and kind of understanding that and giving that mindfulness, I think we're doing our job, and it'll make Andrea proud, and the unicorns will sing, and it'll be a good thing. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today here in the Coach's Corner. But if it's your first time listening and would love to hear more content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app and search the Endurance Lab, or head to YouTube and do the same. And don't forget to click subscribe. For more information on when the next lab is, head over to the endurancelab.fit to learn where you can join us to train smart and get results. We'll see everybody next week, the day after Christmas.